What did a significant other say to you that made you immediately leave the relationship? Ask Reddit. Asleep lavishness 332. I am not attracted to you. Honestly, I have never really been attracted to you. A lot of the time, I am somewhat physically repulsed by you. Poison Lenny 37, 1728. I am related to a well-known singer. The guy the first was dating turned out to be a huge fan, and all he ever wanted to talk about was said singer. One day he asked if he could meet my family and I was super happy. My cousin, however, was in Germany at the time and couldn't attend. When he found out my cousin wouldn't be attending, he threw a massive childish tantrum in front of my whole family and kicked over the barbecue. His words, "What was even the point of inviting me?" I agreed. Peach and Betty. 4105. I got drunk last night and gave the DJ a blowjob after he gave me a line. Pretty much killed a 5-year relationship for me. CNT Shamaikara. 12,027. I cheated and it's your fault, but we can get through this together if you do better. Cavitat. 12,135. You need to choose who's more important, me or your kids. Easiest decision ever. He seemed genuinely shocked that I chose my children. So Flamingo. 12,447. My godfather, whom I was very close to, died. We were eating in the kitchen when I heard. I immediately left, in tears, to the airport to get to the funeral that was happening the very next morning in another continent. When I was back, 48 hours later, first words out of her mouth were, "You didn't do the dishes." Arcanite M. 5760. When she kept telling me daily she could do better than me. Go on then. Pearly P 2020, 3798. I mentioned I didn't feel appreciated. He said there was nothing about me worth appreciating. I cooked, cleaned, and paid all of the bills. I see how much I loved him. That broke me. Dinero Baby 221. 5110. What's a thing? Either SFW of NSFW. You said you'd never do but ended up doing it and liking it? Ask Reddit. DKF_. Me opening this thread. It's gonna be butt stuff. They're all gonna say butt stuff. The actual thread. Gardening. Safety dance in my pants. 2922. Gardening. It seemed like a boring old people hobby to me. I guess I am old now because I love it. Vigilant Tapioca. 6842. Never understood why my mom acted like stopping somewhere after work was a huge burden and was absolutely the worst. I understand now. Lol. Charger 485. 8001. I used to look at my parents and wonder how they could be so out of touch with the times. Now I look at the younger generation and I have no idea what the hell is going on. Interesting draw 4298. 13,664. Repairing my clothes. I used to throw out everything that had even the smallest scratch or rip on it. Now I try to care for my things. Daniel G 198. 1840. Installed a bidet. Can't live without it now. Kevin Git Armstrong 4775. Wowzers. Not me coming to say, pee on someone when they kept asking, and finding the answers are all. Country dancing and golf, leaving feeling like a monster of a human. Clean Fish 6740. 2895. Play games. As a kid I was so against the idea and considered myself better for not consuming games. Now I understand that I was an asshole. Best cheese sandwich. 3535. 5. What is your worst addiction? Ask Reddit. Juicy Brains 9999. Procrastination. Help. ARI3S_OW. 4720. My phone. I've allowed it to completely ruin my attention span. Beatty, 9486. Sugar. Chef Familiar, 5472, 3511. Pizza. I have gained so much weight now that I have disposable income. A_peakful_Vulcan, 1048. Alcohol. It's honestly cost me tens of thousands over the last 10 years, both directly and indirectly. DM 2593. 1268. Phone and jerking off. Overkill 373, 978. Googling symptoms. The Myth Guido, 1471. Porn. Frosty Art 5439, 1891. Who's your, how TF have they not been fired? Coworker, and what have they done to earn that title? Ask Reddit. LKC14. Worked for a company that tested soil samples for mining companies. Each test had to be given 0.002 within 0.0001 of a gram of a white substance. Can't remember what it was called. So the company wins a massive contract and there is a lot of work to be done. Too much for the lab, so they start falling behind. The manager, accountant, tells everyone that to speed things up you are to put 0.02 within 0.005 of a gram instead. Do you know how long it takes to measure out 0.002 of a gram? But the results all come back wrong and the mining company wastes $300 million mining for copper that wasn't there. And successfully sues. 0.300 people lost their job, which was 50% of the company's workforce. Manager who made the bad call didn't lose his job, as he denied he told everyone to make the gram change, even though there were about 30 witnesses who said he told them directly. I started work at this company about 2 years after this event. I have never heard so much abuse and vitriol about a person as this manager. Nobody in the company had any respect for him and treated him with absolute disdain. There were signs on the doors of some labs telling him he was banned from entering. People used to tell him to F off in the corridor as they walked past him. I tried to stay neutral, but when I heard what happened, Captain_Coco_Koala, 6352. This pales in comparison to some of these, but I have a current coworker who doesn't attend team meetings, doesn't log much in the system, posts on LinkedIn several times a day, and has her "open to work" banner up. She called out our boss at a large company-wide meeting and completely blew off our yearly team on site. She joined for the CEO portion of the meeting and was on her phone the whole time. I kinda love it because as long as they're around, I'll never have the heat on me. ATL Sports Burner. 3556. I work in a hospital. She frequently touches patients with unclean gloves. She unleashed a fart so bad in a patient's room that the patient actually asked her to leave and not return to their room. Aside from that instance, she has been fired from numerous patients' rooms for a variety of reasons. She doesn't manage her time well at all and fails to get her assigned patient baths done. Most recently, she was caught touching a patient with a known communicable disease without gloves. And she was interacting with an unclean specimen collection pan from the same patient, again, without gloves. I felt bad for her at first because it felt like everyone mercilessly bullied her. But she sorta deserves it at this point. Shabalaba. 3342. My boss at Walgreens. When she took the position from the prior shift, she promptly canceled the overnight shift, which was a problem cause that was when we got things like cleaning and restocking done. She then shoveled those responsibilities onto the evening shift but didn't increase their staffing numbers. Instead, she fired people on that shift for having the audacity to use vacation time. So even though the store had a 3-employee minimum, we often had 2, occasionally dipping down to 1 if, for any reason, the other person couldn't make it in. like being sick. Even if both people were in, it wasn't a small store and they were expected to clean and restock it. While dealing with the large amount of customers that only petered off around 9 to 10-ish. Since the store closed at 11, that only left about 1 hour when everything asterisk had to get done. And there were still customers. Just not as many. She then routinely ignored vacation time requests even if they had been filed months in advance. Threatened people with firing if they didn't come in while sick. And harassed any employee who wasn't working with 100% uptime. So if you, say, took a moment to sit down cause you had been on your feet for 8 hours. Or if you weren't facing the store despite seeing a customer blatantly coming up to check out. She'd get furious. It was next to impossible to avoid write-ups. Her chewing you out, ignoring requests, and everything. At least if you weren't on her shift. Oddly, not only was her shift properly staffed, always, but every employee on it got a favorable review complimenting their hard work even if they were entirely inept. My boss's boss worked at another Walgreens nearby and I got sent over to help with the Halloween rush. He was utterly baffled how the lazy and inept employee had completely restocked the entire store and cleaned it and everything 2 hours before the shift was scheduled to be done, leaving no work to be done. Even when I explained to him what was going on, he didn't believe me. When I finally moved away and had to quit, she asked how much time I needed off and said she could give me 2 weeks at most. I laughed and told her I was giving her a 2 weeks notice. My sole regret is that now, 4 years later, I had to move again and the only large employer in the area is a different Walgreens and I am too scared to apply cause they'll probably have me on file saying I did a bunch of horrible stuff. Snow2. 1447. I work in a cash industry with someone who refuses to lock their cash drawers. When I pointed out to her that she is on camera and can get fired from stepping away from her cash drawers without locking them, she said, well then, I'll just pretend. Lady, they can see on camera that the drawer is obviously unlocked. She also keeps offering to search the building with her gun, that she is absolutely not allowed to have on premises. Every time there is a security issue because she wants to shoot someone. Needless to say, we tell her no. She once credited the wrong account because the account number on the payment didn't match any account numbers we had. The person had transposed some digits. Instead of looking up the customer or contacting any of her coworkers, she just punched in random numbers until something popped up and credited that random account. She then blamed the people whose account she credited. People who had nothing to do with the payment that was made and were honest enough to tell us that they had been mistakenly credited. For giving her the wrong account number, she once asked me if an email was domestic or international. And if it was international, what would she have to do to send an international email? She genuinely surprised that no one else agrees with her racist mentalities. Constant loud personal phone calls about private things that no one needs to hear, especially as we are not allowed to have our phones out while working due to security and privacy issues. Drinks exclusively energy drinks and cannot figure out why she has some severe stomach issues. Keeps going to her car to grab something every 15 to 20 minutes as if we can't see through the large glass window to the parking lot that she is a chain smoker and the reason why our nice flower garden is full of cigarette butts. Will talk to people as if they are in the middle of a conversation with her even though they have just arrived or are walking by, and will continue that conversation for 5 to 10 minutes after the person has left. Chua Octopus. 1373. I worked in corporate America. Fortune 500. I have too many stories to tell, but one stands out to me. Corporate headquarters in a $80 million building has a master electrician who has been there 40 years and knows where all the bodies are buried. I install a bunch of UPS dual backup offline battery systems in server closets. 40. At about 5 kA pop. The units required a 30 amp breaker and receptacle with correct gauge wiring. The master electrician changes my spec without saying a word. Calls out for 20 amp breakers since that's what was already there and available. And after my install is complete, he goes back in, whacks the 30A cable ends off the UPS and installs a 20A hubble now the UPS won't provide. Maximum runtime under load. And he has voided the warranty on $200,000 worth of UPS systems the asshat spends a month arguing with higher-ups that his opinion supersedes physics. And I finally get the manufacturer to send a "you bought it, you name it" letter. I eventually have to yank all 40 units, replace the correct cable end, and get a sign-off from the manufacturer they will still honor their 5-year warranties. Problem solved. 3 months later. Same site. A $400,000 end loader goes missing. Vanished. It pops up at the master electrician's farm parked in the back 40. And he explains that he took it home to do some maintenance. Despite having no heavy machinery experience. And staying silent while everyone was frantically looking for the end loader. No one fires the guy. 2 months later. He gets arrested for his 3rd DUI. And the C-suite crowd intervenes with the courts and cops and he gets probation. Kept his job another year and then retired with full benefits and a huge pension. Pusfaleto Nut. 2035. When I worked in the nursing home laundry room, my coworker literally refused to do the job she was hired for. She actually told the supervisor she wasn't going to do it. Not just that, but she didn't do anything else either. She spent more time on the smoker's porch than in the laundry room. She drove her friends home while she was on the clock. She refused to pick up the soiled laundry more than once or twice per shift, even though she was supposed to pick it up 4 or 5 times. People would tell me that they didn't see her for hours at a time and quite often questioned whether she was actually there or not. She once called the supervisor and told her that she wasn't coming into work that day because she was too drunk. She was also working in the nursing home kitchen and would leave the laundry room to go work in the kitchen, because they paid her more to work in the kitchen, even after she was told multiple times to change into clean scrubs before going in the kitchen. She would still wear the scrubs she had on while working in the laundry room, then go into the kitchen to prepare food. This woman got the same evaluation score that I got and the same raise that I got, even though I was doing 99% of the work. Roses for the monsters. 935. I work for a hospital. A few years ago I transferred out of scheduling and into a different area of the hospital. Radiology. Before I left, they gave me a new hire to train to be my replacement. My specific job in scheduling was transcribing paper orders from doctors' offices who were outside of our specific hospital system into our EMR software, into the patient's chart, and then call them to set up their appointments for any outpatient testing, imaging, cardiology, etc. This job required more medical knowledge than some of the other scheduling jobs, since they were working from orders were all already entered correctly into the patient's chart, directly by the ordering doctor. Often the way the outside doctors would order things didn't 100% match the way exam names were worded in our computer system, so I'd have to do some interpreting based on understanding the nature of the tests and medical terminology know-how. They gave me this specific new hire because they thought she had medical experience. She had been an office manager for a doctor's office, I was told. Turns out she hadn't worked in a doctor's office at all, but in a dental office. Big difference. Teeth are like the one thing hospitals don't work on. She had no knowledge of human anatomy. Outside of the mouth, she could barely name organs. let alone know where they were or what all they did. Aside from that, she was just generally dumb. She said she'd been let go from her managerial position because the dental office did a lot of downsizing during COVID. I imagine she was just equally incompetent there and they used COVID as an excuse to get rid of her. After only a couple of days, I went to the scheduling boss and asked for someone else to train, saying that this new lady just could not do the job. That's when my boss said, "But she has medical experience." And I had to break it to the boss that it was only in a dentist's office, prompting a big facepalm from the boss. But they didn't have anyone else to put into the job, so we were stuck with her. Still, I had a couple more weeks to train the new lady, so I did my very best. I provided her with lists and resources. I wrote out medical abbreviations for her. I explained to her over and over again that when a doctor orders an RUQ ultrasound, that means right upper quadrant of the abdomen, and that in our specific software we had to enter it as a limited ultrasound of the abdomen and just specify in the free text area that it was an RUQ. Still, every time she came across one, and there would be multiple per day, she would stop and ask me what it meant. She had shoved all the notes and resources I've given her into a binder and never looked at them. She'd just ask me instead. But it was about to, mostly, not be my problem anymore. So I did my best and then went on to my new job. Of course, in my new job in radiology, many of our patients ended up being scheduled by her. So I still had to deal with her fuck-ups. She'd schedule the wrong test, give the patient the wrong instructions, etc. And she never seemed to get in trouble for it. When we'd catch her mistakes, we'd call her and she'd apologize profusely and say she didn't know and would never make that mistake again. But I knew she knew better because I had taught her those specific things. Fast forward 3 years, and she still hasn't learned. She's still fucking up patient orders and appointments. Most recently, she scheduled a patient for a regular CT scan, when the ordering doctor actually wanted the kind of CT scan where we inject contrast directly into the patient's spinal canal, rather than just in an IV. She realized at nearly the last minute and tried to cover up her mistake by changing the appointment to the correct test about an hour before the patient was to arrive. And she didn't call to tell anyone. Luckily, our department saw the test pop up on the schedule and we all went, WTF, because those procedures have to be planned in advance. When we're going to be jamming huge needles into people's spines, we like to have a bit of notice so we can make sure we have a doctor, interventional radiologist, that can do it, and a nurse available. And there's special prep for the patient as well. They have to be off blood thinners, and they have to bring a driver. We called her and her excuse was that she didn't know it wasn't like a regular CAT scan. It has the word intrathecal in the test name. And yeah, a layman might not know what that word means, but if you're going to be involved in planning patient care, you should probably not be a complete layman and at least try to learn the language. Sapphires 13, 523, 20